tonight we will be going into Daniel chapter 9. I have we have to do chapter 6, but we will leave that for most likely we will do that last. I'm excited about chapter 9, 10, 11, 12. Daniel chapter 6 has to do with Daniel in the lion's den, and I think everybody have an idea as to what that chapter chapter 6 is about. So let's just start our class today. And you remember we finished Daniel chapter 5, verse 31, with and Darius the Mede took the kingdom, being about 62 old. This is where we left off last day, Daniel chapter 5, verse 31. I told you that Cyrus, he was at Opis, and they had just captured Opis, and Opis was necessary for their campaign because that was a crossing point in the Tigris River. And then Sippa, the other town, surrendered to Cyrus. And while Cyrus remained in Opis, they were diverting the water that was going through the city of Babylon. And while that was going on, Darius was the general who was leading Cyrus's army. Now, the reason why I'm going back at this, I want you to understand that it was not Darius who captured, he was not the Medes and Persians who captured Babylon, but it was Cyrus. Cyrus was the king who captured Babylon, and Darius was the general who was working for him. Now, Darius, his name was Gubaru, and you spell it either G-U-B or U-B-U-G-B. Gubaru, he was the general who took Babylon for Cyrus. He was the governor of a place called Gotium. And Darius was a title, not a name. His name was Gubaru or Ubaru. And like Pharaoh is a title, and I told you that Alexander the Great, he was a Pharaoh. Ptolemy, he was a Pharaoh. Cleopatra, she was a Pharaoh. When Moses was in Egypt, Ramses II or Ramses I, he was the Pharaoh. And today we have Joe Biden as the president of the United States, but the president is not a name but a title. So Darius is just a title. It means scepter holder or the one who holds the scepter. And this guy is supposed to be Gubaru or Ubaru. Now, if he was 63 scores and 2 years old, then he had to be born around 601. That means that God had already, while God was using Nebuchadnezzar to capture Judah and bring them into captivity in Babylon, God has already made provision to get them out of Babylon. That is why that 62 years old was very important. So this is where we left off last day, and I want to stress this, that you will always remember this, that Darius the Mede took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. That is the King James Version. You see at the end of the verse here, I have King James versions, KJV. Now, look at this verse. Darius the Mede received the kingdom being about 62 years old. And this is the new King James version. Let me get my highlight. You'll see it here. This is the new King James version. And if you were to take verse 31, chapter 5, and look for it on the internet, you will see all of the translations or modern translations is telling you that Darius received the kingdom. And if Darius received the kingdom, it means somebody had to give him the kingdom. So the person who gave him the kingdom was Cyrus. So nobody in this class will walk away believing that Darius was the guy who conquered Babylon, but it was Cyrus. That is important because that's scripture. The Bible says so. Let's go on. Now, Daniel chapter 9, verse 1. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Mede, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. Now, the realm of the Chaldeans is another way of saying the Babylonian Empire or the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So when you see the realm of the Chaldeans, that is the Babylonian Empire. The next thing I will talk about is which was made king. He had no right to the throne as if he was the son of the king. He was made king as a satrap or as somebody who was put there in place to rule while the real king is canvassing or he is on a mission or he's fighting another country somewhere. And so Darius or the scepter holder was made king. Now the third thing I'll talk about is Darius, the son of Ahasuerus. Now this guy, I tried very hard to find out who exactly was Darius, the son of Ahasuerus. And there are so many different versions to this that I cannot exactly pinpoint who he was. This is a different guy from the one who conquered Babylon. The one who conquered Babylon, we know exactly who he was. He was Gubaru or Ubaru. And he was the governor of Gothium. But they said that that guy died about 3 weeks later. And this is another Cyrus. And the next slide will show you why that is so difficult. However, I always told you that the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, is a timestamp. It is a timestamp so that we can have an idea as to when this chapter actually took place. Now you'll remember that Darius captured Babylon in the year 539. And 3 years later will be 535 or 536. In fact, they captured Babylon in October of 539, so they wouldn't count 539, they will count 538. So 3 years later will be 535. And I'm telling you this because we have an idea as to when this chapter took place, between 539 and 535. So that's what this timestamp is about. So in the first year of Darius will be somewhere between 539 and 535. And the kingdom, he was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. Now, take a look at this slide. Now, this here is a list of all the kings that were the Persian kings. And you remember in our study, we started off with Cyaxares in the year 627. This is actually when he started to reign. We didn't start off here. We started at 627. Now, what history is saying is Ahasuerus was Cyaxares. Now, whether that is so, I am not sure. And then Cyaxares had a son by the name of Astyages. And you remember Astyages, he had a daughter who they said was going to have a child, and that child was going to rule the world, and that child name was Cyrus. Now, they said again, they are saying that Astyages probably was Darius the Mede. So in order of, instead of confusing you, I'm just showing you how many different Dariuses there are. Now look at line number 6. This guy, this Darius is Darius the first, but the year is 521, so it doesn't line up with our study. This happened in 521, and the Darius that we were talking about, he captured Babylon for Cyrus in 539. I know this sounds confusing, but I'm showing you why it is so confusing. Then in line number 12, we have Darius the second. Oh, by the way, Darius' son on line number 6, Darius the first, his son name was Xerxes, and that was the husband of Queen Esther. That was where the book of Esther was written. Xerxes was the husband of Queen Esther. And then we have Darius the second. And then on the last line, we have Darius the third. This guy was defeated by Alexander, and he was killed by one of his satraps, and then Alexander became king. So this is the reason why I could not pinpoint exactly who that Darius the Mede was, because there was at least 5 different Dariuses. And I told you that they are, the word Darius means scepter holder, but we have an idea that this chapter was written after 538 and somewhere around 535. So bear that in mind as we go along, and let's continue. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. Now this verse, chapter 2, is where we will stop tonight. And the reason why we will stop here tonight is because this verse is so powerful, it's so strong. I consider it like an onion, a big onion. And in order to understand Daniel chapter 9, you would have to peel back a number of layers before you could get to the heart of what is taking place. And this verse is so huge that we could spend a couple of days on this verse by itself. We can do that. So the first thing that I would like to point out to you is I, Daniel, understand by books the number of years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet. We are talking about 2 powerhouse in this one verse. Daniel was a powerhouse in his own right, and Jeremiah was a powerhouse in his own right. But what I want to show you is Daniel, being who he is, respected Jeremiah the prophet. He held him in high esteem, and Daniel was reading a book that was written by Jeremiah the prophet. So Daniel accepted the words of Jeremiah as the word of God. This is the position Daniel held Jeremiah. So we have two prophets in this one verse, and this alone is a study by itself. Now, I was talking to Pastor Michael about 2 weeks ago, and I told him about this very renowned speaker or teacher. I listen to him all the time, and this probably was an oversight on his part. And he was teaching his class, and he had over 2,000 people in the class. And he said to the people, he said, when Daniel came into captivity or in Babylon, he was allowed to walk with his books. And one of the books that he walked with was a book written by Jeremiah the prophet. And in this chapter, Daniel was reading the book of Jeremiah the prophet, where Jeremiah was talking about the 78 weeks of the desolation of Jerusalem. Now, there is a number of things that is correct in that statement. He was reading the book of Jeremiah, and he was reading the chapters that talk about the 70 years of desolation. But he did not carry the book of Jeremiah to Jerusalem. The book of Jeremiah wasn't written yet when Daniel went into captivity in 605. So let us break down this chapter, and we will spend the rest of the evening on this, in this verse, and we spend the rest of the evening in this verse. Now let us look at Daniel for a minute. Daniel chapter 2, verse 37. Daniel had an experience. He was only about, I say 13 years old, because they say a child in the Jewish faith is an adult at the age of 13. And they said Daniel was a child when he went to Babylon. Remember, we discussed that the last day. And Daniel in chapter 2 already was facing Nebuchadnezzar, and he was explaining to Nebuchadnezzar the vision that he had and the meaning of the vision that he had, with the head of gold and the chest of silver and brass and iron and clay. He was a very, very young man when he was able to decipher this problem to Nebuchadnezzar. That was one of his experiences. Then the second great experience Daniel had was in chapter 4, when Nebuchadnezzar explained to him that he saw this great big tree, and there were so many fruits, and the birds were on the tree, and the animals were under the tree, and there was enough food to feed everybody. And Daniel was the one to explain to him that he is that great tree. But that tree is going to be cut down. And then he explained to Nebuchadnezzar that he will be cast out of his kingdom for 7 years because he lifted up his heart. And he believed he did all of that. And then in Daniel chapter 5, verse 22, he talked to Belshazzar about he was doing the same thing that his grandfather did. Now, what I'm showing you here is the experiences that Daniel had and what made him so great. From a little boy or a young man, he started with all these spiritual experiences that if some of us had those experiences today, we would be lifted up within ourselves. And then in Daniel chapter 6, verse 22, which we will do later on, is when he experienced he had this experience in the lion's den, and God sent an angel to shut the lion's mouth so they did not harm him. And then in chapter 7, Daniel saw in the night vision the four beasts. He saw the lion with wings, and then he saw the lopsided bear, and then he saw the leopard, and then he saw the nondescript beast. So all these are experiences that Daniel had in his spiritual walk. And then in chapter 8, he actually had to deal with Gabriel. And the man Gabriel, or the angel Gabriel, came to him and explained to him what was going to take place in the future. So when it comes to spiritual experiences, Daniel was a great giant. He was a great giant. And then when we look at Jeremiah, then Pashur smote Jeremiah the prophet and put him in stocks. Now, what we are looking at now is some of the things that happened to Jeremiah. Who is Jeremiah? And I'm showing you four things that happened to Jeremiah compared to the things that happened to Daniel. I want to show you a comparison between both of their ministry. So the other side of the coin, we are talking about these two giants in this verse. Daniel was the first one, and he was truly a giant because he had a lot of spiritual experiences. If we had those experiences, we might have been really swell-headed. But look at what Jeremiah went through. Jeremiah was smote. He got beaten up, and then he was put in stocks. Then Jeremiah was threatened. They said, "This man is worthy to die, for he has spoken to us in the name of the Lord our God." He was threatened. His life was threatened. Then in Jeremiah 37, wherefore the prince was wroth with Jeremiah and smote him and put him in prison. Jeremiah was put into prison. Then took they Jeremiah and cast him into a dungeon. So the other side of the coin, Daniel being so great, and Jeremiah, the only thing we see happening to Jeremiah was he was prophesying to the children of Israel. He was prophesying to the Jews in Jerusalem, and they smote him. They put him in a stock. They threatened his life. They put him in prison. They beat him up again, and they cast him in a dungeon. So when you compare both of them, what I want you to see is the humility in Daniel. All Jeremiah did was prophesy, and Daniel accepted Jeremiah as a servant of God, as the prophet of God. Daniel could have said, "Hey, listen, I had all these spiritual experiences. I talked to the man Gabriel who stand in the presence of God. I don't need to listen to Jeremiah." It's like you asking Pastor Michael, "Who's preaching Sunday night?" And he say, "Oh, Brother Tom is preaching. Oh, I don't need to listen to him because I have more experiences than he do." And I don't know if that happened in your church. I've heard people talk about stuff like that where they think they are better than other people. When it comes to ministry, the Lord can use anybody. And Daniel held Jeremiah in very high esteem. He acknowledged Jeremiah as a prophet, and he acknowledged Jeremiah's word as the word of God. This is the point I'm showing you between Daniel and Jeremiah. Now, books by Jeremiah the prophet, or what? How did we come around this Jeremiah writing the book? Remember, I told you Daniel did not carry the books of Jeremiah to Babylon when he was in captivity. The book wasn't written yet. And this is how Jeremiah went about writing his book. And it came to pass in the fourth year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, the king of Judah, that this word came unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, now it's the fourth year of Jehoiakim when Jeremiah was commissioned. Take ye a roll of a book, and write therein all the words that I have spoken unto thee against Jerusalem, and against Judah, and against all the nations, from the day which I spake unto thee, from the day of Josiah, even unto this day. What year was it? The fourth year of Jehoiakim. Jeremiah was commissioned by God to write down all the words that he prophesied against Judah, against Israel, against the nation, from the day of Josiah till the day of the fourth year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. So when did Daniel go into captivity? He went into captivity in the third year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. So a year later, Jeremiah was commanded to write the book. And then Jeremiah told his scribe, who was Baruch, he said, go and stand up in the way to the temple, by the temple door, and read it. Go in the marketplace and read it. And some of the princes, they heard the book that Jeremiah was reading from and said, hey, I think the king should hear this. And they gave Jeremiah an audience, or Jeremiah gave a copy or the copy of the book to the king. And when he heard what Jeremiah wrote in the scroll, he took a penknife, cut up the scroll, and threw it into the fire. So this was in the year around 604, 605, around that time. And Jeremiah had to write another scroll. And over the years, now this particular year that Daniel was reading the book of Jeremiah was 66 years later. So he got hold of a copy of the book of Jeremiah, and he was reading that book that Jeremiah wrote. And this is some of the things that Jeremiah said. And I will bring upon that land all my words which I have pronounced against it, even all that is written in this book, which Jeremiah had prophesied against all the nations. So Jeremiah wrote the book. Jeremiah was commanded by the Lord to write the book. And now the words that Jeremiah write is coming to pass. Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 13. So this is what we are reading. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, and we compare Daniel and we compare Jeremiah the prophet, and the respect that Daniel had for Jeremiah the prophet, and the respect that Daniel had for the words that was written by Jeremiah the prophet, and the respect between these two giants. The words of Jeremiah to the exile. So in the book of Jeremiah, let's see what Jeremiah wrote to the exile. Now remember, Jeremiah was writing, well, he was living in Jerusalem, and he was writing to the exile who was living in Babylon. And he said, thus said the Lord, he that remaineth in the city shall die by the sword, by the famine, and by the pestilence. But he that goeth forth to the Chaldeans, and when we talk about the Chaldeans, we are talking about the Babylonians, shall live. For he shall save his life for a prey, and shall live. So this particular verse in Jeremiah chapter 38, verse 2, was written around the year 597, 598. This is when Nebuchadnezzar was surrounding the city of Jerusalem, and the soldiers were preparing to fight with the king of Babylon, who was outside the city gate. And Jeremiah, we are having an insight as to what was taking place inside the city while Nebuchadnezzar was surrounding the city of Jerusalem. And Jeremiah was telling them, he that remain in this city shall die. If you remain in the city, you will die. Put down your weapons. Do not fight the king of Babylon. If you will die, you will die by the sword. If you don't die by the sword, you will die by famine. If you don't die by famine, you will die by pestilence. But the point is, people, you will die if you remain here. The only way for you to survive is to go in captivity with the Chaldeans, go with the Babylonians, and you would live. The reason why you would live is because this is God's way of protecting you. This is God's way of saving your life. This is what Jeremiah was writing in that book for the people in the exile, or the people who was about to go into exile, or the people who wanted to stand up and fight against Nebuchadnezzar. He said, do not fight. I could see Jeremiah running up and down the streets, trying to get the attention of the soldiers and telling them, go into captivity with the Chaldeans. You would live. God promised you you would live. Do not fight. Put down your sword. I could see Jeremiah like a crazy guy running up and down the streets. Did you know what they did to Jeremiah because he said that? This is when they throw him in the dungeon. They throw him in a dungeon because of what he was saying in this verse. And an Ethiopian eunuch went to King Zedekiah and said, they throw Jeremiah in the cistern, and it was an abandoned cistern, and the bottom of the cistern had mud, and Jeremiah was sinking in the mud up to his waist. The Ethiopian eunuch said, Jeremiah will not survive in there, he will die. And the king gave the Ethiopian eunuch permission to go and take Jeremiah out of the cistern. But this is what Jeremiah was telling them. These are some of the words that Jeremiah was talking to the children of Judah, or the children of Israel. Now, verse 38, chapter 38, verse 3. Thus said the Lord, this city shall surely be given into the hands of the king of Babylon, or the king of Babylon's army, which shall take it. So Jeremiah was saying, there is nothing you can do about it. You will go into captivity with Nebuchadnezzar, or by Nebuchadnezzar, in the city of Babylon. He said, this is what the Lord is saying unto you. You have to listen to me. But some of them fight and they die. So he said to the ones that listened to him, he said, when you go to Babylon, build houses, live in them, plant gardens, and eat the fruits thereof. He said, you are going to go into captivity. There is nothing you can do about it. Jeremiah 29, verse 5. He said, when you get there, you build houses, build up your community, dwell in it, because you are going to be there for a long time. Plant a garden, plant a vineyard, and eat the fruits thereof. He said, take ye wives, you young men, take a wife, have children, begat sons and daughters. Your daughters and sons will grow up. Take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands. In other words, you will be there for a very long time, because your children will grow up. You will have sons, you will have daughters. They will grow up and they will be big enough to get married, and they will have sons and daughters, that they may bear sons and daughters, that he may increase there and not diminish. So Jeremiah, or the book of Jeremiah that Daniel was reading, this is what Jeremiah was saying to those who are going into exile. He said, you will be there for a very long time. Now, did you know that while Jeremiah was prophesying this, there were prophets of Israel who was condemning what Jeremiah was saying? He said, no, 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 you will not be there for a long time. You will be there for 2 years. 2 years only, Nebuchadnezzar will disappear. He will no longer be around. Just 2 years. You'll be coming back home. Don't worry about it. And he keep nagging Jeremiah. And Jeremiah put a yoke around his neck. And Jeremiah was walking the street. This prophet Hananiah, he came and took the yoke and he broke it. And said, don't pay attention to Jeremiah. Then Jeremiah turned around and said, the yoke that God is going to put on Judah when they go to Babylon is an iron yoke. You can't break that. And he got tired of this prophet prophesying the wrong thing. So he said, you know what? I think you will die in less than a year. Later that year, that prophet died. The children of Israel, they went into captivity in Babylon. And they built up a community. Those who went in Babylon, they lived. Those who went in Babylon, they got married, they had wives, they had sons, they had daughters, they had grandchildren, they had vineyards, and they built up a very big community in Babylon. Because Jeremiah wrote that in his book. Jeremiah told them. One of the last things he said was, and seek the peace of the city whither I have caused you to be carried away captives. He said, pray for the peace of Babylon when you get there. And you know, under Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon had peace because they probably listened to Jeremiah and prayed for the peace of Babylon. And pray unto the Lord for it. For in the peace thereof shall he have peace. So when Babylon have peace, the Jews live in peace, and they prospered under Nebuchadnezzar. Now, Jeremiah, in chapter 9, verse 1, we talk about the 70 years. So what is this 70 years about? In Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 11. So what do we have so far? The children of Judah, they were planning to fight against Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, he laid siege to the kingdom of Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem. Jeremiah told them, don't fight, go with Nebuchadnezzar. You have no choice but to go with Nebuchadnezzar. Go there and start living your life as usual. He said, and this whole land shall be desolate. He's talking about Jerusalem now. He said, you go in Babylon, God will save you, God will protect you, God will prosper you. He said, this land shall be desolate and astonishment, and all these nations shall serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. All nations shall serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. He's talking about Judah. He's talking about Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin. They shall serve Babylon for 70 years. Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 12. And it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished that I will punish the king of Babylon and the nation, said the Lord, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it perpetually desolate. So the point I'm driving at here is you will have to go to Babylon. When you go to Babylon, you will be there for 70 years. That is the length of time you will be there. The other prophet was saying, no, it will be 2 years. He died. Jeremiah said 70 years. Why was Daniel reading this at this time? The reason why Daniel was reading about this 70 years, and the reason why Daniel was reading these verses was because the 70 years was almost over. That is why Daniel was reading this. For thus said the Lord, that after the 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word towards you in causing you to return to this place. This is what Daniel was reading from the prophet Jeremiah. Now remember, Daniel went to Babylon in 605, and now it's 66 years later, and Daniel is reading that the 70 years will be accomplished, and God is going to visit the Jewish people in Babylon at that point of 70 years. That is when God is going to visit them. And he recognized that the 70 years is almost over. It is year number 66. So the question is, why 70 years? Why God put the children of Israel in Babylon for 70 years? Now, in order to understand that, we have to go back and do a little research about the Sabbath. And if I ask you, most of you, what is a Sabbath, you will say it is on Saturday. A Sabbath is on a Saturday. And we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, and the seventh day is the Sabbath. So this is what we understand by the Sabbath. Now, what does the Bible say about the Sabbath? On the seventh day, God ended his work which he made and rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all the work which God created and made. So the seventh day, God rested. God blessed the seventh day. God rested from all his work, from everything that he created. Yes, that is the concept of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a day of rest. It is the seventh day. And this is what the first time in the Bible we see the concept. The word Sabbath was not mentioned here, but the concept of the Sabbath was mentioned in Genesis chapter 2. Now in Exodus chapter 16, verse 25, in earlier verses, verse 23, was the first time the word Sabbath was mentioned in the Bible. And Moses said, "Eat that today." And he was talking about the Sabbath. Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. What is happening here is that the children of Israel, when they were in the wilderness, for 6 days they would gather the manna that fell from above. And this particular day, that Moses was telling them, the manna that you gathered yesterday, you are going to eat it today, because today is the Sabbath. This is the first time the word Sabbath was mentioned. And he said, if you go out in the field today, you will not find any manna, because it's the Sabbath. Now look at this verse. 6 days you shall gather it. 6 days of the week you shall gather the manna. But on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. So you have to gather a double portion of your manna on Saturday, enough that would last on the Sabbath day. On the Sabbath day, you do not go out to gather any manna, because there is no manna on the Sabbath day. God is not going to give you any manna on the Sabbath day. Any other day, if you have extra manna, it will turn to worms and it will spoil. On the Sabbath day, it don't spoil. That's a miracle in itself. See, for the Lord had given unto you the Sabbath. Therefore, he giveth you on the sixth day the bread for 2 days. So on the sixth day, you have enough food to last the sixth and the seventh day. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day. So this is the what the Sabbath means. I am not going into too much detail. It's not a study on the Sabbath, but I want to make sure you get an idea. God used to feed the people manna in the wilderness. For 6 days they will go and gather their manna. On the sixth day, they would gather enough to last the seventh day. It will not spoil. They would stay in their tent and they would rest. They would relax. They would spend time with their family. That is the Sabbath. It's a day of rest. Now, that is for a week. That is for 1 week. You have 6 days you work, on the seventh day you rest. What about years? You have 6 years, and then you have the seventh year. This is a Sabbath also. It is called the Shemitah year, or the sabbatical year. And this is important. The Shemitah, sometimes spelled Shemitah or Shemitah, is the final year in the 7-year cycle. So you have 7 years, year 1 through 6 is regular years. The seventh year is called the Shemitah year of debts forgiveness and the land use prescribed for Israel in the Old Testament. Now, what is the Shemitah year? It's the seventh year in a 7-year cycle, the final year in a 7-year cycle. So how we have 6 days and then a Sabbath, we have 6 years, and then the seventh year is the Sabbath. So let us see. Now, I remember telling you this when we were studying Daniel chapter 1. Surely at the command of the Lord came upon Judah to remove them out of his sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did. This scripture verse looking a little out of place here, but what I'm telling you here is at the beginning of our Bible study, I gave you 2 reasons why Israel had to go into captivity. And I said one of the reasons was because of the sins of Manasseh. The second reason is what we are dealing with today, the Shemitah year. This is why I put this verse here in. So the second reason why the Jews had to go into captivity was because of the Shemitah year. So we are looking at the Shemitah year. And the question is, why 70 years? Why did the Jews have to go into Babylon and be in captivity for 70 years? I'm explaining that to you now. The rules of the Shemitah year. What are the rules of the Shemitah year? The Shemitah year, remember we said, is the final year of a 7-year cycle. So what are some of the rules? Let us look at the fields. What should the Jews do to the fields in the 7th year? Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. So you see, previously, the children of Israel have to keep the Sabbath. But God is saying to them, when you come into the land of Canaan, the land of milk and honey, from the wilderness to the land of milk and honey, the land will have to keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. Not just you. You have to keep a Sabbath every week. But the land have to keep a Sabbath for every 7 year. Every 7-year cycle, the land have to have a Sabbath. 6 years, thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather your fruits thereof. Remember, we are talking about the Shemitah year. The 7th year is the Shemitah year. So 6 years, you will sow your field. 6 years, you will prune your vine. 6 years, you will gather your fruit. But in the seventh year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. This is as simple as it gets. You have 7 years. 6 of those years you will sow your field, you will prune your plants, and you will harvest your plants for 6 years. For the seventh year, you will not do that. You will let the land rest. The land is going to have a Sabbath unto the Lord. So you don't sow, you don't prune, you don't harvest. Let's go on. Exodus chapter 23, verse 10 and 11. And 6 years thou shalt sow thy land, and shalt gather in the fruits thereof. But the seventh year thou shalt let the land rest and lie still. During that time, the poor of thy people may eat from the land, and what they leave in the land, the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner, thou shalt deal with thy vineyard and with thy olive yard. So let's say you have a big field with olive trees. For 6 years, you will prune the tree, you will fertilize the tree, and you will harvest your olives. But the seventh year, you will not touch any of the fruits. You will not pick any. Now the tree will still bear in the seventh year, but you leave that for the poor people. You do not pick the fruits. You do not harvest your fruits. You do not sell your harvest. You do not touch it. In fact, if you have a gate around your land, you leave the gate open. So whoever wants to come and pick the fruits in the seventh year, they could do that. You do not harvest the fruit and feed anybody. They have the right to come and pick the fruits and take whatever they need in the seventh year, because that is the Shemitah year. Whatever they leave, the animals can eat off of it. That's rule number one. So then you ask the question, if we do not plant, what shall we eat? If ye say, what shall we eat in the seventh year? Behold, we shall not sow or gather in our increase. So they are saying, what shall we do in the seventh year? How shall we eat? This is where the Lord comes in. Then I will command my blessing upon you in the sixth year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years. In the sixth year, you will have enough fruit to last 3 more years. So you don't have to harvest anything in the seventh year. The trees will bear so much that you do not have to harvest. You have enough fruit to last 3 years. In the sixth year, the same way for the Sabbath week, the sixth day, God is going to provide enough manna so that the children of Israel can eat for 2 days. In the Shemitah year, the sixth year before the Shemitah year, the trees are going to bear bountifully, 3 times as much as they would normally bear. So you will have fruit for the next 3 years. And ye shall sow the 8th year. So you're not sowing in the 7th year, you're sowing in the 8th year. And eat yet the old fruits until the 9th year. Because if you plant fruits in the 8th year, it will take a year to grow and to start bearing the following year, which is the 9th year. Until the fruits come, you shall eat the old stock. So God is going to give you enough fruit to last the 7th year, the 8th year, and the 9th year. All that will come in the 6th year. Now, the other part, the other law is concerning the debtors. A debtor is one who owes. A creditor is one to whom something is owing. If you borrow money from somebody, at the end of the 7th year, thou shalt make a release. The word shmita means to release, and you shall make a release. And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lend aught unto his neighbor shall release it. So if you lend money to your neighbor, on the 7th year, which is the Shemitah year, you go to that person and you said, your debt is forgiven. He shall not exact it from his neighbor or from his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. So if you lend somebody money on the 7th year, you tell them, brother, it's okay, keep it, the Lord forgive you, and that's the end of that. You do not take that money ever. What about a slave? And if thy brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee and serve thee for 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free. Now in those days, if a family is very poor and they owe somebody money, the man will take his wife and children, go to that man and said, I owe you money, I cannot pay, we will be your slave. And during that time, on the 7th year, you would have to release that slave. You let them go. You let them go free. However, and when you send him out free from thee, thou shalt not let him go empty. Thou shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flock, if you have sheep, and out of thy floor, if you have store in your storehouse, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto him. So you don't let them go empty-handed. These are the 3 rules of the Shemitah year. Blessings and curse. Now, if ye will not for all this hearken unto me, but walk contrary unto me, then I will walk contrary unto you in fury. And now this one is important. And I will make your city waste. And this is what was happening in Jerusalem when he took the children of Judah out of Jerusalem. He destroyed the city and will bring your sanctuary unto desolation. This is what he did. He promised them, if you listen to me, I will deal with you fairly. If you don't listen to me, this is what is going to happen. So he set before them the blessings and the curse. You will be blessed. This is what will happen. And I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it, and I will scatter you among the heathen, and I will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities wasted. This is what Nebuchadnezzar did to Jerusalem. He destroyed the city, and he destroyed the temple, and he made it desolate. Now, in the year 586 was the last time Nebuchadnezzar swept through Jerusalem, and he destroyed the temple and took every single thing that he could put his hands on. Everything that he put his hands on, he took it away. Because this is what God told them. If you don't follow the Shemitah year, you don't let the land rest, then I am going to make your city desolate. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbath, as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land, even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbath. So the question here was, why did God take the children of Israel into Babylon for 70 years? Why did God make Jerusalem desolate? Because the land had to rest for 70 years. Now, this is important, for 490 years, the children of Israel did not keep the Sabbath, the Shemitah year, 490 years. Every 7 years for 490 years, they did not keep the Shemitah year. That will, if you divide 490 by 7, you will get 70. That is how we have the children of Israel in Babylon for 70 years. And while they were in Babylon, Jerusalem was resting. While they were in Babylon, the land of Judah was resting. So that 70 years that the land did not rest, now the land is resting because God removed everybody out of it. And look what it says here. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbath, as long as it lieth desolate. That is the reason God made Jerusalem and the land of Judah desolate, so the land would enjoy her Sabbath. And ye be in your enemy's land. This was necessary, that they be in Babylon. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy his Sabbath. So why did God take the children out of Jerusalem, out of Judah, and take them into Babylon? So that the land of Judah will rest for 70 years. That is why they went into captivity for 70 years. Now, in the year 586, Nebuchadnezzar left the poorest of poor people in Jerusalem. He left the poorest of the poor. But then later on, the other Jews that was in neighboring country, they came back to Jerusalem. But then that would mean that the land is not resting. Those people that came back, they moved everybody into Egypt, including Jeremiah. And Jeremiah died even in Egypt, where they stoned him, because he told them, do not leave. But they left. And they stoned him either in Egypt or they let him go back to Babylon. So this is why. As long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbath when he dwelt in it. Now, and then that they escaped from the sword, carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants unto him and his sons until the reign of the Persians. Now, even in Second Chronicles 36:20, God is telling them that he had already made provisions for them to come back to Jerusalem because the 70 years was about to finish. And we saw where the king of Persia came and captured Babylon. And this is what he is talking about here. Until the reign of the kingdom of Babylon. That is when the captivity will end. That is where the captivity will end, and the children of Israel will come back home. So at this point, I would have to stop. I think I passed my time, and we will continue this next week. And in this chapter, we are dealing with the 70 years, and at the end of the chapter, we will be dealing with 70 weeks in this same chapter. I think this is very interesting. I hope you, I see nobody left. I appreciate that. I hope you enjoy this study, and you can go back and revise it on the video. We will finish this class next week, and we will continue with the 70th. Amazing chapter. From here on, the book of Daniel is amazing. And God bless you. And Pastor Michael, I'll turn back over to you.